Okay, we continue in Sefer Shoftim. We're in Perek Ches. We're going to begin Pasuk Chaf Daled. God willing, we will finish the Perek today. So we just finished after Gidon successfully destroys the enemies of Midian and kills the kings, and he punishes the people who did not help him in battle. The Jewish people say, "You be the king over us. You be the king, your children be the king, your grandchildren will be the king because you saved us from Midian." And Gidon responds, "I will not rule over you. I will not, my children will not rule over you. Rather, Hashem will rule over you. And that should be good enough for you." So the Yalkut Shimoni, the Medrash says that there were three offers to him. They offered him that he could be the king, and his children, and his they offered grandchildren, but he said three things as well. I won't take it, my children won't take it, and Hashem will rule over you. So for those three responses, his reward, we'll see in the next parak, is that his son Avimelech was a shofet, was a judge for 3 years. So he did the correct thing. Now it's interesting. Nobody comments on this, but the verb that's being used to make him a king is mishol banu. Mishol banu. Now there's two ways that we have, as we have in this week's parsha. You could say a person can be a melech, or a king, or a moshel, or a ruler. Right? We say the pasuk ki lashem hamlucha, for the realm is God's. Umoshel bagoyim, and he rules over the nations. So there's usually two verbs that are used for being a king. Melech is being a king, and Moshel is being a ruler. The Malbim, many times before, has told us what's the difference, and it's in this week's parsha. This week's parsha, where the brothers say to Yosef, "Hamaloch timloch aleinu, will you surely be a king over us?" Something like v'timshol banu, umashol timshol banu, and will you surely rule over us? It's two different verbs. So what's the difference in the verbs? The first verb, melech means that a person is the benevolent dictator, as meaning to say that the people offer themselves that he should be the king over them. That they ask him that he should be the king over them. "We want you to be the king. It's our greatest pleasure you should be the king over us." And that's a spirit of friendliness. A moshel, a ruler, means that the person against their will becomes their ruler. A conqueror who comes into a country and takes over the country, we don't call him a melech, we don't call him a king, but rather we call him a moshel. He's the ruler. He dominates. So, and that's why it says, ki lashem hamlucha, the realm belongs to God, meaning to say the way it should be, and the way it is for the Jewish people on the right page, is that we want you to be our king. Right? But Vatom Moshel Bagoyim, but you'll be a ruler over the non-Jewish nations of the world. The non-Jewish nations do not want you to be the king of the world. And you will ultimately be the Moshel. You will rule over them with your strong fist. You will show them your power, and you'll be the ruler over them. So, and that's why in Rosh Hashanah the theme is, what do we start? We say Hamelech, the king. We want you to be our king. And that's the whole theme of Rosh Hashanah, that we say, Hashem, we want you to be our ruler, not that you have to force yourself upon us. So the question, I didn't see any commentators talk about this. So the verb use is very unusual here. He say, Mishol banu, rule over us, force your rule upon us. And he says, no, I won't force my rule upon you. So, it's kind of interesting. Why did they say Maloch Banu, be a king over us? Because if they're making the offer, it should say you should be a king. We want you to be a king over us. So the only thing I could think of is, well, it's not necessarily all the Shvatim, all the tribes necessarily wanted him. In other words, maybe the Shvatim in his region up north wanted him, but for him to be the king would mean everybody would have to accept him. And it could also be, remember, you could say another shot, is that all the people were still into idol worship. We don't find, after all is said and done, do you see any psukim hinting the fact that he got them to do tshuva? He did tshuva. He became something special. The others doesn't seem that there was a tremendous amount of tshuva. As we see, he will try. So it could be, yeah. He would have to rule over them. You'd have to force us to follow Torah and mitzvahs. In other words, we're not necessarily into the whole program. We're very happy that you saved us militarily. But, you're going to have to rule over us, and maybe they say, well, we're happy for you to push it upon us. But for us to eagerly accept it, it's not. So it could very well be this is why he refuses it. In other words, had they said, Milach Banu, we want you to be the king, and we want you, and everybody wants you, and we're willing to whatever you say we should do, then maybe he would have entertained the thought, well, if they're willing for me to make them the king, and they want that, and everybody wants that, then okay, it's worthwhile. But if you're telling me I should be a ruler over you, and I'm going to have to push my agendas always against you guys, and there's probably a lot of people who don't want me to be the king, as you see from Ephraim. You think Ephraim is going to be so happy to let him take over and be the king? After the trouble they gave him already? You think the other places on the East Bank, they're going to hear that he went and knocked out a tower and killed people? He already, that was already ruling. That wasn't that they accepted him as king. So I would assume that the reason he did not accept it is because he didn't feel, as much as people wanted some kind of leadership, but he knew, and they even said it themselves, but it's not that we really want, everybody really wants you to be the king, but it'd be a really good idea if you'd force yourself upon us. It says forcing yourself, it wasn't his personality to be able to do that. It was hard enough for him to do everything that he did do. And for him to always be the one forcing himself upon others, he figured, that's not what I want. But you know who's going to force you? Hashem yimshol bachem. Hashem is going to rule over you. In other words, they probably say, no, we're not. We're into idol worship. You force us. You make us good. We'll be good. If you force us, you punish us, you this and that. He says, that's not for me. We'll leave it for Hashem. Hashem's got enough koyach to keep punishing you, as we'll see very shortly in the next chapter as we go through the same circle again. The Jewish people. They go back to their very terrible ways very soon, and Hashem will have to be the ruler over them.
It doesn't say which tribes asked them. It just says,
I know.
There's not specific.
You'd have to say it was those tribes who suffered most from the pillaging of the Midianites, which is more on the east bank and even on the west bank, but closer to the Jordan River.
The west bank originally.
But it was still closer to the Jordan River.
Yeah.
It was that river. That was what was the. Let's look at the topography of Eretz Yisrael. Which area is worth pillaging in terms of crops? By the Jordan Valley region. That's the eastern part of the area. It's not that lush in central Israel. Right? Go to Jerusalem, there's nothing there. There's no farms at all. It's a lot of mountains. So the tribes who lived in the mountains, they really didn't suffer. You think Midian's going to go? Remember, Midian, they live way east of Eretz Yisrael. How far are they going to send campaigns of marauders in? You can go all the way into the heartland of Eretz Yisrael where there's mountains. They go where it's quick and easy. Jordan River Valley, it's got lots of lush things. So those tribes that were on the eastern side and a little bit northeast, those are the ones who suffered the most. Those who probably appreciated it. But to be the king already, to be king over the whole Eretz Yisrael, and it doesn't seem there was enough. And that could maybe, again, what's East Yisrael. There were people from the Jewish people. Some of them who would be happy that he should be the leader, but knowing that for you to be the king, you'd have to rule over a lot of people. Even the ones who he helped, he had to punish them. So it wasn't going to be an easy go. So he figured, for that, it's not for me. I don't need this. But he does ask for something. Yomer Aleim Gidon. So Gidon does say to them, Eshalomi kem shela. But I will ask you for one thing. Usinu li ish nezem shlolo. I'd like every one of you, all the people who, now I guess could be certainly all the 32,000 soldiers who were with him, and could be others who also were involved here. But remember, there are all these people who were involved in the capture and the destruction and the looting of Midian and the countries. So everybody will give me one nezem, one nose ring from the loot. Why? Ki nizmei zav lahem, because they had many nose rings. Ki yishmaelim hem, because they were Yishmaelites. The Midianis were Yishmaelites, were Arabs. Now how does that figure into being Arabs? Because we already said Midian is from the children of Keturah, who was Hagar, who was the wife of Abraham. Hagar was the mother of Yishmael, and she had more children, and one of them was Midian. So they all had like one name. All the descendants of Hagar were called after her eldest Yishmael. So they're all called Yishmaelites, and that explains why in this week's parsha, it all ties in, it's coincidental, that when Yosef was sold down to Mitzrayim, first it says it was a caravan of Yishmaelites, and then it says, and he was sold to the Midianites. So what was it? Was it one or another? So there's a whole thing over there. Some say he was sold to one, then sold again, was sold back and forth. But according to this, you could say Pashut. They were Yishmaelites, they were Arabs, and specifically they were Midianim. Yeah. And now you can understand why it would be Midianim in terms of Yishmaelites. Why? Because what's the whole point of Midian, as we said? They're Middanim, they're the ones who cause strife and argumentativeness. So who do you think the brothers would sell him to? Which tribe does it make sense to sell him to? Which non-Jewish nation should he go to? You know, Amalek? No, it's Midyanim, because they represent striving with each other, and specifically the areas of immorality. And now Yosef is being hinted to by God. He says, you think he's just being sold by anybody? You're being sold to the Midianites, who are overall Yishmaelites, but specifically Midianites. In other words, can you give me the Chumash here? I don't have one. Okay, I'll do it by heart. If you give me the Chumash here, I just want to make sure I'm not misquoting you, but I think this much I was Mavur said already. I would say this, from this, you could give a simple shot into what's going on in this week's parsha. Instead of saying he was sold from one to the other to the other. It says, Yehuda says, L'chuvedim karenu la-Yishmaelim. Let's come to the Yishmaelim. So Yishmael was the generic term for all the descendants, because from a distance you don't know exactly which group of Yishmaelim, right? So at a distance they're seeing them coming. So okay, it's a caravan with camels, so it's Yishmaelites, right? But they're far away. But then it says, Vayavru anashim midyanim socharim. Then passed by them Midianite socharim. Right? So that's who they were more specifically to. So they pulled them out. And then it says, and they sold Yosef to the Yishmaelim. Right? And it's interesting when it comes back to the story at the area, and it says, V'hamidyanim machru also Mitzrayim. And that's mamish the root. It means the people who would strive and make contention to who? To Potiphar's Paro. And why are they focusing there? Because now he's going to be put into a place of immorality, and that's how the Midianites would get the Jews to separate from Hashem by causing them to fall in immorality. So it's mamish perfect. It mamish fits in 100%. So I don't know. Rashi over there, talks about what's going on. Midianim, this, Yishmaelim. So he says there was many sales going on. I don't know if you're forced to say that. I don't know if you're forced to say that if they're called over here Yishmaelim, he's calling them who's talking about Yishmaelim over here? It's Midianites. Now he's calling them Yishmaelim because they had an overall way of conducting themselves. So I think it's beautiful the way Yosef is mamish pinpointing what the issue that he has to deal with. He was the one that, and the brothers were striving with each other. There couldn't be any peace between each other. He accused them of immoral behavior. Right? So now he's going to go down to Mitzrayim, and they sell him, of all the people who sell him to Potiphar and to a place in Egypt, was a very immoral place. So it all fits in. It all fits in. Now, they also explain why do they have these nizamim, why do they have these nose rings. So it appears that it was some type of things that was very typical for them, and there was some connection to idol worship as well with the nose rings. But it is an ornament that is hung around the nose. Okay, so that's what he asked. Now, what does he want these for? So Vayomer, they said, okay, Nasan Nitin, we'll surely give you. Everyone give me just one. You took a lot of loot. There's thousands of you guys. Give me one. I only need one. Vayivrasu as a simla, they spread out a blanket, like to collect it all up, a garment. Vayeshlichu shama ish nezem shalom. Everybody put in one nose ring from the loot that he had. Vayimishkal nizme hazav asher sha'al, and it's interesting. He's saying, I want to borrow it. He says, I want to borrow from you guys. He didn't say you have to give me, but they gave him. But then he comes back and says, see, even that he's not saying you have to give it to me. I'm just borrowing it from you. It's not really mine.
Now do something.
So what do you see from this right away? You see that he was not a greedy guy. He's not a greedy guy. He was the king. He could say, usually the rule is the leader gets half the loot. Half the loot. And everybody gets it. And they're glad they still get half. He asked for one nose ring from everybody. Right? So it says the weight of the golden nose rings which he borrowed, Elef Ushva Meos Zohov, was 1,700 gold coin weight, whatever, a very big weight. Levad, besides what he was able to take himself directly as a leader, which he took from the other leaders that we mentioned before, yesterday. Levad min hasaharonim vanetifos ubigdehar gamon shal malchei midyan. Besides those moon ornaments that we talked about yesterday, that hung around and hanging ornaments, and different colorful garments that were on the Midianite kings. When you kill the Midianite king, you get all his regalia, and that for sure goes to Gidon. So besides that, and also the bracelets that hung around the necks of the camels of the kings, that were also must have been very decorative. So besides that he got anyway, that was his right automatically. But now really it was entitled to 50% of all the loot that came from all the guys, because these Midianites, these could have been mercenaries, these were people who were probably paid in advance. So there was lots of loot all around, but he only asked for one little thing from everybody. That came out to 1,700 gold of whatever weight or value that is. Okay, so what did he do with that? Why did he need it? He made it into an ephod. Now, what is an ephod? So, ephod is a generic term for a religious garment. If you recall, not to be confused, in the Mishkan, when it discusses the different garments that the Kohen Gadol would wear, the high priest would wear, one of the garments is called an ephod. The ephod was like an apron. It was like an apron. It was an apron that had straps over the top. That was the ephod. Sitting on the ephod was what? Was the Urim V'Tumim, was the breastplate that had the 12 stones of the tribes. Also very important that ephod was connected to other garments, and right at the top shoulders were stones, and in the stones had the different colors and pictures of the tribes. Okay. So we'll see everything that's going on over here. So, but he didn't make it into an apron. Almost all the commentators say he made it into a belt. And we see throughout Tanakh that there are different people who had an ephod, different spiritual leaders. He's not trying to pretend to be a Kohen Gadol or anything like that, but it is a religious ornament. It says, for example, the Kohanim of Nov, although they weren't the Kohen Gadol, they would carry an ephod around them. It says Shmuel and David, it said that they had an ephod, and they weren't Kohanim at all. But in carrying religious garments, something to show that there's something special, and you'll see in a minute why this is a religious garment. So Gidon also wants to do this. It's not to be mistaken that he wants to be a Kohen or any of this kind of stuff, but he wanted to, in Lahavdil, when you watch Super World Wrestling, World Wrestling, the champion with the belt, and like it's a grubba belt. It's like huge. It like takes up his whole chest area. It's huge with gold and silver ornaments, and that shows that was victorious. That's not what Gidon had in mind, okay? But you can imagine that's that guy. So for the non-Jews of the world, that belt means we're heavyweights, we're champions. He wanted the belt more so as you recall, even the Kohen Gadol, when he wore the belt. He wore a belt. It was 32. I think not Amos, I don't know, Tfachim, whatever, long, which represents the word lave, heart, whatever. There's a lot of spiritual. The holy of a belt is a very spiritual thing. a gartel as well. A gartel before you're down. But one of the halachas is that a man especially has to have a belt. You have to wear a belt. Every common Jew has to wear a belt, and that's one of the brachas we make. Ozer Yisrael Bigvura, you gird us in strength. Wear a belt. Every Jew should wear a belt. Why? To separate the upper part of the body from the lower part of the body. And it's very important to make that distinction. Why? Because you realize that the upper part is the holier part of the person. Above the belt is, just like in boxing, no shots below the belt. So in Judaism and spirituality, there shouldn't be a lot of activity below the belt. It's not the most spiritual part of the person. And if anything, based on what we're seeing over here, what drove the Jews to idolatry? What did we say all along? Why did Jews want to be idols? They're such big lovers of idolatry. But once you believe in idolatry, then you can have immorality. That's the obvious step. Because if there's no God, there's no law, then you do whichever you want. So the idea of wearing the belt means that there's a clear distinction, the upper part and the lower part, and the upper part should dominate over the lower part. So by wearing that belt, so it's like a sophisticated, like super fancy Hasidic gartel, a religious ornament. So at vice versa, you could imagine. I don't think you ever see Arabs going with gartels. A gartel, again, if you don't know, a gartel is a black little, what do you call it? It's a strap, not strap. It's whatever. It's like something you wear it before davening. You put it on just around, even if you have a belt. You don't have to do it, but Arabs, they go with the long white thing, and I don't know if they have a belt around them. Mitzad Spur makes sense that they wouldn't have it. If it's something that we have to wear, it must be others aren't wearing it. Right? If everybody wore a belt, why would the Torah have to tell us to wear a belt? Right? Like we wear tzitzis. Do Goyim wear tzitzis? Goyim don't wear tzitzis. We wear a kippah. They wear a kippah. Right? So we have to have a belt. Because the whole idea being there has to be a separation. In other words, my mind and my heart tell me what I do. And based on what my mind and heart tell me, then I will control the organs below to make sure they follow suit. Now, in a world where there's no distinctions, it's a blur. So so the organ that gets excited, has an appetite, let that control the mind and say that homosexuality is normal and it's something. It's an alternative lifestyle. It's not coming from the brain or the heart. It's coming from below the belt. It's dictating what's going on over here. So you understand the whole issue we're dealing with is with the Canaanites and the influence from them and the Midianites who have tried to separate us from Hashem by us being immoral, and the Jews were buying into this lifestyle. So what's the best thing? I can't say. They're saying, why don't you force yourself upon us? Force religious, coercion upon us. We see you're pretty good. You knocked out an altar and you got everybody excited and angry, and you said, "This is what Hashem wants." Right? So you're the kind of guy, you're gonna push religion on us, so go ahead. So he says, I'm not going to push any religion upon you, but what I will do from you is I will try to inspire you. I will wear certain clothing that you'll see, ooh, what's this belt? What's this belt? What do you mean, what's this belt? Every good Jew should wear a belt. Why don't you make a belt from the loot that you have? And more than that, they're going to say, so you can imagine a couple of years later, ooh, that's the most amazing belt with all this gold. Where do you get all this gold from? Oh, we get this gold from, ooh, there was a big war. We had the Midianites. They start saying over the whole story. Just like the Pesach story. What's the whole point of the Pesach story? To believe there's a God who controls every aspect of your life. Well, Rabbi, that was 250 years ago. Can you imagine what was going on then? It was only 250 years ago since Egypt. That's all it was. 250 years ago. And Jews are worshiping gods and everything. So you have to say a little more contemporary, Rabbi. Something that I can relate to. It says, remember those Midianites? Remember, it wasn't so long ago. They're pillaging us and terrible. There's no way we could defeat them. And I came with 300 troops to go against 135,000 troops. And Hashem told me to lead us, and I didn't even have to use a sword. And Hashem gave the enemy to us, and this is the memory of this. So that would be something inspiring. So Gidon figured this would be the way, and then people could, they'd be inspired to serve Hashem and come to me, see the belt. Can you imagine? It's the attraction. Ooh, come to Gidon's area, come to Avi Ezri where you'll see the famous belt. And that will be inspiring the people to come back to Hashem. And that was his game plan. However, we'll see, it didn't quite work out that way. Anyway, Vayatseg Oso Be'iro, he set it up, as it were. Let's see, the commentary doesn't say, but it's Vayatseg. It's like, what does the English say for Vayatseg? Like, set it up, he established it. What do you got? It's on Pesach 27. What do you got there for the English there? He made the belt and he did what?
That's it.
He what?
Said he made it after he made it.
The next word after he made it. Vayatseg Oso Be'iro.
Set it up.
He set it up. He set it up. It's interesting. What do you mean he set it up? Why didn't he wear it? Maybe he didn't wear it so much. He said it was on display.
Yeah.
It was a display thing. Be'iro, in his city, Ba'afra. Now here's the word. Now you already see it's a problem. Vayiznu chol Yisrael acharav. And the word Vayiznu means what? And they strayed. All the Jewish people strayed afterwards. Right? In other words, the place where it stood, that's where they served it. And the truth of the matter is, what happened is they turned it into an idol. But it happened after his death. It happened after his death. It became for Gidon and for his family a mokesh, a stumbling block. Now, not instantly in his lifetime. It will be later on in his lifetime, after he died. But it became a stumbling block, and it was used as an idol worship. Where's Rabbi Yossi over here? So his intention was it should be a remembrance for the miracle. Now it's interesting, Rabbi Yossi says he made this as a belt, and he says it's a type of sorcery. And it seems that sorcerers would use it. So we'll see in a minute, like, did he really intend that it should be sorcery or not? I'm sure didn't intend it, but maybe it became something that was used for sorcery. But clearly he had the best of intentions in mind, but not necessarily was he so careful about this. See, you're going to see in a minute, he doesn't go out and start teaching people Torah. He doesn't get a whole system of, we're going to change the system over here and we're going to go around from place to place, like by Devorah. Divorces, we all have to get people back and learning and all this. Oh, you know what? It's nice Jewish symbols. Oh, here it is. There's the Seder plate. You know, there's the menorah. Let's have a nice lot of Jewish symbols. Here's another great Jewish symbol, the famous belt. And we'll come to the famous belt. It will remind us of the miracles. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's your solution, then it's oy vavoy, if that's your solution. Because then you just take the Jewish symbol and incorporate it into your non-Jewish understanding of life. And that's unfortunately what happened. You'll see, he wanted just basically, okay, I did my job for country, king and country, and now I just want to relax. I don't want to get involved in the politics. You see, he didn't really like this so much. He always pushed it all. When he had to rise to the occasion, he rose to the occasion. And then when the first opportunity, you'll see that he can get out of the picture. He's not into being a king. He's not into cover. He's not into money. Nice, simple guy. And that's what he does. And let's just finish this one pasuk. Vayikonam Midyan lifnei bnei Yisrael, and the Midianites were subdued before the Jewish people. And they didn't continue to raise their head up against the Jews. And the land was quiet 40 years during the time of Gidon. Now, it's interesting, we've already said many times, what does it mean when it was quiet in this for 40 years? But if you look carefully, Malbim learns like he's been learning consistently, not 40 years, but 40 years minus the 7 is 33. But all the other commentaries suggest, because the wording is a little bit different, if we contrast that to let's say, during Devorah's time, it's going to be the beginning of Perek Vav. You see, the wording is going to be different. It says, "Vatishkod haaretz arboim shana." The land was quiet for 40 years. That's not what it says over here. What does it say? "Vatishkod haaretz arboim shana bimei Gidon." Adding the words bimei Gidon. What are you adding the words bimei Gidon? Right? Meaning to say, in his time it was quiet for 40 years. That means we don't include the 7 years. So it's a machlokes exactly how long this was. But there's no more trouble from Midianites. They were out of the picture. Now, let's just discuss a little bit over here some interesting things about this ephod and what happened.
By these generations, they still have the Yetzer Hara for idols.
Sure, for sure. Right? Now, here's an interesting thing. The question is, why did he choose an ephod more than anything else? Why an ephod? Even if it wasn't the apron, but it was still called an ephod. It was named after the same name as the apron. So it said the ephod. So here's a very interesting thing. So the Medrash asked, well, why of all the symbols, he could have just made a gold-plated sword. Maybe not a sword, they didn't use a sword. He could have made anything else as a display model. Why Badafka an ephod? So the Yalkut Shimoni, the Medrash discusses this. And he says like this, Lefisha Menashe lo hoya be'avnei ha'ephod. Menashe was not amongst the stones on the ephod. Ki im Ephraim, but Ephraim. In other words, the 12 tribes were listed on the ephod. Now, there seems to be an argument in different Chazal as to exactly which tribes were written on that. One opinion says you had 12 tribes. One of them was Yosef. The other matter says it wasn't Yosef, but the skion of the family of Yosef, which was Ephraim. Instead of Yosef, it was Ephraim. And Ephraim, remember, they were the stronger one of the two brothers. And that was Yehoshua and all that. So on that ephod, the stones on the ephod was Ephraim and not Menashe. Right? And that's what it says. And Yaakov gave the better blessing to Ephraim. And he says, V'lo hoyo lo mazel. He didn't have such mazel, good fortune. Menashe didn't have as good fortune as Ephraim. So he was concerned that his tribe, and he's from Menashe. So my tribe, doesn't rate. It doesn't rate as much as the other tribes. So obviously he had spiritually good reasons, but he said, so therefore I want to build up my tribe. I want to give them a little. So there's a big fancy religious ornament that has all the tribes, but not mine. So I'm going to make a religious ornament that will be typifying my tribe, because everyone's going to know this is the ephod that belongs to Menashe. You want to find the ephod, the fancy ephod that reminds of Hashem's victories over the enemies? Go to Shevet Menashe. It's the Menashe ephod. So you want to have his own religious symbolism, as it were, to help Menashe as well. Okay? So it didn't work. Obviously it didn't work, because what happens? So the Jewish people, they would go over. What did people do with the ephod? What was the whole purpose of the ephod with the Kohen Gadol? Was to ask Hashem questions and say what's going to happen, and the lights would shine up, the different letters would shine up, and you get an answer from that. So the ephod was used to ask from Hashem what to do. So therefore he's calling it an ephod. So maybe this ephod can also tell us the future as well. Why do we got to go to Shiloh, to the Kohen Gadol there, that all the other tribes are involved in that, but we're not really, our name isn't on it. Really don't feel part of all this religious predictions and all these things. Our name isn't even there. It really is a very strong question. Why? And I would say this is Ephraim's test. We find this many times in the Torah. God appears to snub people. Right? He snubbed Pinchas. He snubbed many people. And Hashem says, just take it easy. Let me see how you're going to work with this. Are you going to accept it, or are you going to try to do your own thing? So it seems as good as Gidon was, but again, he wasn't very learned, he wasn't very scholarly, and he figured he used his Balabatisha mentality, his own simple-minded, gut feelings. Right? It doesn't seem like he went to any rabbis to get their input as to what should I do to remember this event. So he figures, well, listen, my tribe is spiritually disconnected. And again, you could see he could have rationalized, we're not even part of the Kohen's breastplate. Of course there's a lot of idolatry going on in my tribe. So I want to give them a special spiritual boost that's going to be just for our tribe. And it's going to be called an ephod. And that means there'll be some kind of, and maybe it was invested with a little bit of spiritual power. Right? So that's what the Ramban says. Ramban in Sefer Breshis, last week's Parsha, he says, so is the idea of the ephod, that once we got accustomed to the holy ephod, so they made things similar to it. Similar to it. And they would believe in that, and they would be mistaken after them. And then Hashem says, don't seek out from others the future. And he says, and Ramban, last week's prayer says, that's the reason Gidon made the ephod. And the Jewish people strayed after this. So what happens? So the guy who made it, Gidon, he planned on this helping us to serve Hashem better. Right? That they would not stray after the idols, and it became an idol. Why? And this tells you the golden rule. People like to make innovations in Judaism. Innovations that aren't grounded in halacha will only destroy the Jewish people. It's nice to want to do something. Keep it within the realm of halacha. Right? You want to have some kind of memory for this? Go to the Beis Din, go to the rabbis and say, we want to have a way to always remember this event. What do you suggest we do? Hear what they have to say. Say, no, we have a whole idea over here. And I'm going to do this, it's going to be amazing. It's because you don't understand. You got to get to the core. They're still idol worshippers. All you're going to do is channel it to be, okay, it's like, Jews for Jesus. Okay, so we're Jews, we're proud Jews, we're great warriors, but we're still, and we'll have a special Jewish icon, but it's still what? To use to discuss the forces that are not the kind of forces that direct us related to Hashem. Okay, we'll have to continue this tomorrow. Very interesting.